Okay, so I'd like to hand over to Peter now. There you go, Peter. So Peter and I have sort of worked together for...
Sparred, Gary.
Sorry?
Sparred a bit over the years.
Sparred over the years, okay.
I just,
yeah. Over a long, long time. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Gary. Look, I'll put a picture up there as me as a farmer. That's our farm in not far from Biggleswade on the Bedfordshire, Hertfordshire, Cambridgeshire border. And I have to add a caveat that, I might have been involved with the NFU, I might have done AHDB, and I have all sorts of people checking what I'm going to say. So no one's here to do that today, so don't hold me to it. I'm not going to be sort of judged, hopefully, by what I say. And an example, I was going to use an example that was in the Times this week of someone getting off their comfort zone. And it was reported, I think, this week, and it said about 25 years ago, during a joint press conference with the French Prime Minister at the time, Lionel Jospin, Tony Blair was asked if he was jealous of his counterpart's policy successes. Answering in French, and this is where I think Blair went beyond his comfort zone, the New Labour tried to say, very envious of the magnificent positions that Jospin had taken on different policy issues. What he actually said was he desired Lionel Jospin in many different positions. So that's my caveat of being, please be careful and don't judge me too much on what I have to say. Look, it's 12 years since I finished at the NFU. I had a reputation for trying to be continually optimistic and positive about the future of the industry, because I think it's really important that the external message we send is about how important we are and why it's valuable and why I still get, and I'll talk about it later on, excited about the industry. That doesn't mean I'm completely lost my marbles. It doesn't mean I've lost control of my senses and I don't understand what's going on. I know we've had a shocking harvest, particularly in this part of the world. It's even worse if you go west of here. And also know, Mr. Whitlock's in the audience, perhaps you'll tell me about the grain prices. There might have been a bit of a fillip over the last few days. It's gone up and down again. But we all know that arable farming's in a really horrible position. And that brings me to the point that we have to be careful of where we sit here in East Anglia. I'm looking around the room, I can't judge everyone what they do, but a largely arable crowd thinks we're all going to hell in a handcart. The truth is, if you look at the total income from farming, and I know, Gary, I haven't done that index and all the rest of it to work out what inflation's done, but actually there's big chunks of farming that's had a bloody good run. And we need to be open about that. We can't keep going to people saying, we're all going bust. I had a phone conversation, Julie will know the person I'm talking about, somebody who started on a county council farm in Cambridgeshire. They now own a small farm in Yorkshire, have 100 suckler cows. She told me that they'd always had a residual overdraft of £160,000. She met me at the NFU conference last week with a big grin on her face. They've now got 20 grand on deposit. People with suckler cows, people in the other parts of the industry have had a good run with what's going on. A couple of weeks ago on the Radio 4 programme, Peter Tuberg was on the radio. He's the chief executive of Arlo. He was uncontrollably excited about the record results they had in 2025. On the back of it, I know dairy prices are coming down or have come down with quite a sharp jolt, but they're giving enormous dividends out to their members who are dairy farmers. If you look at eggs, if you look at broiler chickens, which I'm fortunate enough to be in, if you look at the horticultural sector a year ago, there are many bits of UK farming that are doing quite well. So we do have to bear that in mind when we go and talk to government, when we're making a case for what's going on in the industry. A big chunk of UK farming, that's why total income from farming is up where it is, because those sectors have been prosperous in recent times. My warning, and we heard about the SFI being announced this week, is coming back to government. That is government debt. I think if I'm right, we spend 62 billion on the defence. 2.5 billion is an agricultural budget we talk about. I think 2 billion on the environmental schemes or what is being packaged. Today we spend 333 billion on welfare, and that's forecast to be over 400 billion by 2031. So the idea we're going to hold a begging bowl out to government and say you're going to come and help us out, I think is for the birds. We need to think really hard about what we're going to do as an industry. That's why, Digby, your talk about thinking differently about what we're doing is so important. I'm just going to put that, I think it's 3 trillion now, in perspective. Someone said to me, well, is a trillion a lot? And I try to work it out in seconds and how long ago that is. You know, 1,011.5 days, 1,031 and a bit years. A trillion is 31,000 years ago. A trillion is an incredible sum of money. The government is spending 100 billion a year servicing that debt. So I apologise for being slightly tough on that message. I'm going to go to the previous slide. How do I do that? Right. Thank you. Thank you. Going backwards and forwards, I'll catch up with the technology in a minute. But look, and Gary obviously wanted me to be upbeat and optimistic about the future because he did such a good impersonation of a funereal undertaker, Gary, with your mood and message. Look, the world is an incredibly volatile place. You look at the news, whether it's the conflict in Iran, Ukraine, war, uncertainty over the bonkers man who's the President of the United States, you know, whether we've got government, already mentioned government spending priorities, and the whole move away from globalisation, which bluntly I can't get my head around. There's some real challenges facing the world today, and what I will come to is why I believe people want more integrated supply chains going forward. Add to what's going on in the world and those examples I've given there, and the madness of Donald Trump with his Independence Day of tariffs. This as a farmer is something that really rocks me every time I look at it. This is a chart showing the number of days over 28 degrees each year, going from 1961 to 1990 to where we are today. It worries the hell out of me because my biggest challenge as a broiler farmer is hot chickens in sheds. But we know what it does to growing crops. I'm also involved at the Guinness estate at Elvedon, trying to keep reservoirs full. We haven't even got them full now. Water is a massive issue, high temperatures. Look at the yields we had this year. Climate change is also, I think, resonating not so much with politicians, but certainly, I think, with our customers who do want to act differently. And that's where I'm going to move forward now to a couple of quotes which I deliberately got off people in the supply chain that I come across or worked with in the past. And this is on why I'm actually really optimistic. I put a field of slight sidetracker. One of the reasons I put that field of rape up is I've convinced myself I can grow rape now. I suspect that'll go wrong once I get to next August or next July when I combine it. But actually, we've had a great autumn, haven't we, as arable farmers? We ought to be excited about what's in the ground. And I know as I came across from Royston this afternoon, there's a lot of ruts about and some yellow patches about. But wheat and rape is by and large corner to corner. So I remain incredibly optimistic about the future. And going back to those comments I made about the people I talked to in the supply chain, I think the retail sector is really waking up to what they require and what they need from us as farmers. Paul Christian was giving me a hard time and said not in all sectors. We were chatting beforehand. But actually, Sainsbury's are now delivering 10-year agreements for people producing pork for them. They're doing the same with chickens, seeking higher welfare, seeking long-term commitments, and building in margins that mean we should, this is part of my summary when I come to the end, is encouraging us as farmers to think differently. Ashwin Prasad, the boss of Tesco's, was at the NFU conference last week. He said exactly the same. They are willing to partner farmers, to put money, investment into helping you develop farms, put sheds in, put irrigation units in, put reservoirs up. They want farmers to invest for the future. Why? Because of all those issues I raised, all those global instability issues, they can see it. They can see the climate change. They can see the volatility of tariffs. They want local supply. And the people I actually supply for our broiler chickens is Cranswick, and I just got one slide from them. They are really looking. They will fund or help fund some of the planning restrictions you might be facing. They're helping fund the building of new pig, poultry sheds. ABP in the beef sector are looking to partner farmers to help them invest to do other things. It is important Because actually what you're doing, I think, is helping make your farm more diversified. And if I'm looking around my farm, and I remember what, I am 65, so I remember joining the EU just, but I wasn't farming at the time. Almost all our farms were mixed. We had something more going on the farm than just growing arable crops. And the benefit we've had, and I make the point that my brother and I invested in a broiler production in 2016, and my key message of that is I was 55, brother Richard was 56 at the time. You're not too old to try new things. Think about what else you can do on your business because, one, as I pointed out, I think government money is tight. I think the idea of getting subsidies is going to be remote. But I really do think, given the global climate, given what's happening with climate change, the industry is really keen for these sort of partnerships. And we were given a new build incentive to help us fund that. I'm going to tell you that the biomass shade in the corner there went up in flames last Tuesday morning. So I had quite a challenge dealing with that this last week. So it doesn't all go to plan. I'm not going to pretend for a moment that everything we do has worked properly. But boy, when we started investing in that, we put solar on the roofs, we've got biomass ground source heat in one of the backfields. I've got a wind turbine that still isn't generating. It's been up for a while. It's had a really checkered history. But when I look at what Donald Trump's doing in the Middle East, boy, am I glad to have some renewables trying to get me off grid for my poultry business. But the key takeaway is that actually delivers for me on my arable farm an enormous, it gives me 3,000 tonnes of chicken manure, 3,000 tonnes of chicken manure, which is helping me reduce my fertiliser use by about 25%. I'm actually worried, Digby, about the ability to absorb carbon in the ground. I think that's quite unstable. I actually think improving our nitrogen use efficiency would be a much bigger win if we're looking to reduce our carbon footprint, and that's something we're trying to work on with our family business. So the point I was going to bring to this is there's been a number of reports. Minette, one of my successors at the NFU, did a report just before Christmas on the future of farming. A lot of it was based around asks of government. It should have been around how does farming improve its profitability. There was quite a lot based on what government can do for us. I do think they're interested in how they help with planning, maybe some of the taxation issues that we face as an industry, but I promise you I don't see more money coming, and I think some of the announcements in the SFI only last week are quite contradictory and are very clear in what they're trying to achieve. I was mentioning something beforehand, £1,072 for unharvested cereals strikes me as a bonkers. And if everyone doesn't have 25% of their farm into unharvested cereals, I'll be amazed. And I suspect that'll be something they'll look at quite quickly, because if we're not careful, again, they'll bust the bank and they'll struggle to move forward with that. So going back to a report that actually was published by Louise Manning at the Oxford Farming Conference, this is my sort of parting shot before I come to some conclusions. Rather than thinking, rather than going back to the old way of what do we want from government, I think we need to change our mindset. And that's why I've deliberately used it. The title of Louise Manning's report was UK Farming Grasping the Opportunities. I think it was challenging us to move beyond survival, embrace an opportunity mindset, one that is mission-led, data-driven and collaborative. It urges us to reject the doom loop of defensiveness, instead lean into curiosity, agility and strategic growth. I think it's really important as an industry we actually look at what we can do, what positives can be taken out of it. And I genuinely mean that I think the industry wants to work and partner with farmers. We still have the ability, by and large, and I don't take this as a given, we have assets we can often borrow against and partner with other companies. But the idea that government's going to ride to our rescue, I think, is past, and I do think we need to take control of our futures, definitely. So my thoughts, and in conclusion, I think there is going to be little or no money going forward. I do think we need to build those businesses, rely less on government. We do need, and the other thing I look at farms, sorry, I'll draw breath for a moment. Good farms are still doing okay. Technical performance is absolutely critical. And I think all of us know, and I know when I've got a crappy bit of wheat or I've got something I've got wrong, I know. And I know some farmers who by and large never get it wrong. I think we all know those people. I can think of Andrew Robinson down near Woburn, whose farm always looks immaculate, whatever happens. Technical ability is absolutely critical if we're going to make a future within the industry. Retailers and processors, I've already said, need domestic supply, and I think their mindset is changing. It might be for different commodities, but certainly in the vegetable side, certainly in livestock, they can see the need to have UK supply as well. My last comment, I go back to my point that my brother and I tried something very new, aged 55 and 56. Think differently. We're not all going to do the same thing. Maybe some of the stuff that Digby talked about is really important as well, really relevant as an alternative. But life isn't going to stay the same. It's how we manage change. I'm excited by the fact there are opportunities out there. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Peter.